As a woman, she was beautiful, with a face cameras loved and a body men craved. She would not pass very far into adolescence before realizing that her physical appearance brought her attention and gave her power. But on this day, still clinging to the remnants of a short and rocky childhood, Madeline would happily have traded her face, her body, and her life for those of her best and only friend, Tessa Woodruff. It was 29 degrees on that February afternoon. The radio said another snowstorm would blow in after sunset. Mr. Walters, the school custodian, didn't put much faith in weathermen, but he figured they had at least half a chance of being right, and so he decided to sprinkle a layer of salt on the walkways before he swept the gymnasium. He donned the plaid wool jacket and matching cap his wife had given him for Christmas, and headed outside with a bucket of salt just as the buses were pulling away. He saw Madeline Beecher standing outside with her coat unbuttoned, holding a brown paper lunch sack. Mr. Walters knew why she was waiting. In his 30 years as a school custodian, he'd seen plenty of friendships between preteen girls, though the relationship between Madeline Beecher and Tessa Woodruff was more intense than most, at least on Madeline's part. Girls could be funny that way. "She's already gone home, Princess." Mr. Walters, who had no children of his own, called all the girls at Edison Princess and all the boys Son. None of them minded. Tessa was one of the first ones out the door when the bell rang. Think Ben Nichols was walking her home. "She wouldn't walk home with Ben Nichols," Madeline insisted. "He's a creep. Besides, we always walk home together." The old man tossed a handful of salt onto the steps and shrugged. Well, he was carrying her books. Whatever it was, she's long gone, probably home by now. He looked up at the sky. Feels like the weatherman was right. Feels like snow. You should head home before it starts. The frown line between Madeline's brows deepened. She sighed. "See you tomorrow, Mr. Walters." "See you tomorrow, Princess." He watched Madeline shuffle down the sidewalk with her shoulders drooping. "Hey, Princess," he called out. "Button up your coat, will you? It's cold." Madeline waved at him and went on her way, coat still undone. Mr. Walters shook his head as he tossed more salt onto the walkway. "Poor little thing," he mumbled to himself. "Doesn't anybody look out for that child?" Tessa and Madeline were born in the same week in March. The previous year, to mark their 12th birthdays, Madeline made a pair of semi-matching friendship bracelets for her and Tessa to wear, stringing fish line with aquamarine-colored beads salvaged from old necklaces that she'd bought at tag sales. It had taken months to find enough. The girls lived 3 doors apart from each other on Oakleaf Lane in New Bern, Connecticut. It was a pretty street and aptly named, lined with big Victorian-framed houses and oak trees with strong branches that stretched streetward to create a canopy of green every spring. Madeline moved there at the age of 9, after the death of her father. She and Tessa became friends the way children often do, with the prodding of some well-meaning adult who assumed that 2 girls of the same age, living on the same street, had enough in common to become friends. This turned out to be true, even though the adult in question never stopped to consider just how different Madeline and Tessa were. Tessa was as petite as Madeline was tall. She too was pretty, but in a sweet, girl-next-door way, with blue eyes, brown hair that refused to hold a curl, and a sprinkling of freckles across her nose. As an adult, Tessa would grow to just a hair over 5'3", and had to watch her diet carefully to keep from putting on weight. As a 7th grader, she hadn't yet reached the 5-foot mark, and after an uncharacteristic bout of begging, she had convinced her mother to let her start wearing high heels. Every day after walking to school,